Hello, HMS Bobcats. Mr. Flato here. Brand new Bob lesson for you today. I've been brainstorming this one for like a couple months, but really a couple years. Really easy to define what it is to respect other people, respect other people's property. Not so easy to define self-respect. Every year, I think in this job, 11 years now, I feel like every year has kind of a trend to it. And this year's trend, talking with students and kind of processing different things, it feels like I keep coming back to having self-respect, having self-respect. Not only that, but it's came down to having not only self-respect, but a healthy level of selfishness. We're taught in a world to not be selfish, be selfless, help other people, and I think that that's critically important. We need to be selfless. We need to um, help other people and avoid being selfish, right? But I do think that part of self-respect is having a healthy level of selfishness. And that's what I'm going to talk about here for the next 2 weeks. And this is specifically made for eighth grade students. So I'm going to get going because it gets a little long. Hope you guys enjoy this lesson. Hope you guys have a great week. All right, this Bob lesson is going to be titled Self Respect and Healthy Levels of Selfishness. But first, let's be our best at HMS. At every week, let's be our best. Let's be safe. Let's be responsible. Let's be respectful. Let's be a learner. So I've been thinking a lot about this over the years when I did messages and lessons on respect. It's pretty easy to talk about respecting other people, talk about respecting other people's property, but talking about self-respect and respecting yourself over the years, I've found has really been harder to define. And so I finally came up with a definition of self-respect, excuse me, the core of what self-respect is. And I really believe that it's having goals and having aspirations for yourself. I've met a lot of kids that I've come to realize they don't really respect themselves, and it's because they have a limited belief of um, who they are about, what they're going to be about, what they can possibly do in their lives. And I've also came across a lot of kids that have high levels of self-respect, and I've noticed that a lot of those kids, they have goals, they have aspirations, they have a plan. And at your age, 13, 14 years old, I've become a huge believer that it all starts with the core of self-respect starts with having goals and aspirations, having a vision of what you want your life to be and what you want it to look like, your life to look like in the future. So it's an important part, it's an important time of your life to start thinking about this. I literally just got an email today from one of the high school counselors about coming over and presenting on classes for freshman year. You all are at that point in life where we're getting very close to having to start looking at our futures a lot more closely and a lot more seriously. So if you haven't started looking and making goals, if you haven't started to think about what you aspire to be to in life, I seriously hope that you will start looking into that right now. Now that we've established that the core of self-respect is having a goal, having a vision for your life, I want to share one of my favorite pictures that I leave on my desktop and I pull up all the time and I talk with students about. This was a picture from the Olympics several years ago that I saw, and I started looking at the picture and I'm like, there's so many metaphors in this picture that are so important, that I immediately copied and saved it and put it on my desktop. Um, in the lower part of the screen is Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps is the most decorated Olympian athlete of all time. I don't know how many dozens and dozens of medals he's won. He's like the best swimmer on earth for like a decade there. And up top is a different swimmer. I don't know who that is. It's really irrelevant to my point here. But talk about running or swimming. It's a metaphor, your race. Now that we have the goals that you have for your life and the aspirations of what you want to be, comes this piece of a healthy level of selfishness in life. The reality is that when we get out into the real world as adults, you all will be on some level in competition with one another for jobs, for status, for positions in life, in the dating world. Competition really is everywhere out there. But when it gets back to that self respect piece, you need to put yourself first in life because the real world is a pretty challenging and it is a rather difficult, hard place. And if you're not keeping your goals and your aspirations at the front of your mind and worrying about your race, then you're really not showing yourself the self respect that you deserve. One of the things I love about this picture is Michael Phelps isn't worried about the gentleman in the lane next to him. He is 100% focused on his race because he knows the only thing that really matters is how quickly he swims his race in life. Conversely, you've got the guy up top. He is concerned with Michael Phelps. He's looking clearly over at him. Anybody that swam knows that if you look over to the side or you break your form, that's going to slow you down. What this metaphor really means in life is the thing that matters the most, and we're going to talk more here coming up, is running your race or swimming your race as a metaphor, staying focused on your race, your life, and not getting distracted at what's going on around you or what other people around you are doing because it's really irrelevant to Michael Phelps's race what's going on in either lane next to him. All he knows is he's dialed in for however long it takes to swim, however far the distance was going, and that's the only thing that matters. So this is an important metaphor, and I love this picture, and I wanted to share it to start talking about healthy levels of selfishness. The first of my keys to self respect and a healthy level of selfishness. The first is stepping away from relationships that no longer suit your goals or your vision. At your kids' age, I firmly believe, and I've read it in research, that you become most like those five people you spend the most time with. Meaning, the five people, the five peers, the friends that you spend the most time with have a greater influence on your life at this age than a lot of your parents, a lot of your teachers, a lot of your counselors, a lot of your coaches in general. This is an incredibly social and peer pressure time in your life. It's tough because it's hard when you've had friendships and you've had relationships with people that have been there by your side, maybe for some of you since you were in elementary school. And this is the number one probably topic I have with eighth grade girls in the last 11 years is what I've called refining friendship circles. It's really hard when people you're friends with, you start to grow apart, you start to go in different directions. And that's really hard on a lot of kids your guys' age. But sometimes I think it's necessary because when you start growing in a different direction and you realize that some of the friendships or some of the relationships you have in your life, those people are starting to make decisions where they're putting you in situations that aren't conducive with your goals and your vision for yourself, you have a real decision to make. And if you want to have that self respect and that healthy level of selfishness, sometimes, unfortunately, it means stepping away. The second key to self respect, removing yourself from unnecessary drama that drains your mental and emotional energy. We only have so much mental and emotional energy we can use in any given day. Let's say we have 100 units. If we're even using 10, 15, 20 of those units dealing with issues that really we don't probably need to deal with, that is mental and emotional energy that is just wasted that could go towards way more beneficial things. I see so many kids getting caught up in so many things sometimes at your age and adults in general. Adults aren't a whole lot better sometimes. Getting their mental and emotional energy caught up in places that it doesn't need to be. And when you do that, you are wasting that energy that could be redirected towards chasing your goals and your aspirations. My last key to self respect for today, running short on time, I'm going to have to do a part two, is avoiding situations that compromise your vision and your goals. We all have decisions to be made every single day. And I really encourage everybody with every decision they make every day to think about what are the pros, what are the cons, what are the consequences that could come from this. A lot of times those decisions are tied to peer pressure or social pressures, and that's why it strongly ties back to the first slide I talked about, but not putting yourself in situations that can get you in trouble. I remember I have a ex-girlfriend. I remember mom, I learned this from her. The quote was, if you don't want to be caught in a forest fire, don't go into the forest. Well, that's always stuck with me to this day. And I think the metaphor, what it's really saying is if you don't want to be caught in a bad situation, don't put yourself in that situation in the first place.
All right, let's give away some jelly beans. This week's winners: Hemi Curtis, Tad McLean, Cole Bilges, Lily Portenga, Nathan Jocks, and Raymond Leonard. The answer was the dad would be 40, the child would be 10. All right, this week's jelly bean question of the week. We got a little visual something. Shout out to our two wonderful art teachers, Dr. Kepler, Professor Smith. Which is the next clock sequence in the order? Is it A, B, or C? Make sure your answer has your first and last name on it. Make sure it's legible. Make sure I can read it. All right, Bobcats, let's make it a great week at the Helena Middle School.